I'm Doug Stinson. And if you're like me, you may be a bit frustrated with spending so much time working on your photographs on a computer. You may long for a chance to work with your hands, to experience some of the physicality of photography, to bring back some of the excitement and mystery of the photographic process. But you probably don't want to go back to the days of the traditional darkroom for any of a variety of reasons. You may not have the space, or you may not want to deal with the complexity of such traditional darkroom processes. If so, I want to introduce you to kitchen sink photography. In this series of videos, I will show you step by step how you can create handmade photographs at home using common materials. In this episode, we'll start with the simplest method, something that a 6-year-old could do on their own. In fact, this would make a good family project. In each subsequent episode, I'll add just a tad bit more complexity to expand the type of things you can do with kitchen sink photography. We will start by making cyanotype photograms. Now, a photogram is simply a cameraless process that you make images by putting objects on a light-sensitive material and then exposing it to light and then developing that. A cyanotype is a light-sensitive material that, when exposed to the sun and then washed in water, develops an image comprising of a beautiful blue color. And what makes the cyanotype particularly simple is that you can buy pre-coated cyanotype paper from a variety of sources, such as the Lawrence Hall of Science in Berkeley, California, under the name Sunprint, and from the Cyanotype store. I will put links below. So let's get started. We're now in my kitchen and about ready to start to make our cyanotype. The first thing we got to do is find a shady area. It's pretty dark over this part of my kitchen, so that should work pretty well. We just want to stay out of the direct sun because the cyanotype is sensitive to the UV from the sun, not very sensitive to any other light. So any place that's in the shade should work. Darker the better, but anything in the shade should be okay. We want to start with some kind of surface that's going to be kind of the base that we use. Allows us to carry the cyanotype around, allows us to put it on an uneven surface. Doesn't really matter what it is. A piece of cardboard is fine. I'm going to be using a cyanotype from the Cyanotype store. There are many different types. They all have slightly different formulations. They have their pluses and minuses. You might want to experiment with different kinds. This is wrapped in a nice light tight seal. We want to take our sheet of cyanotype paper out. The Cyanotype store paper is nice and thick. That's one good advantage, and it's coated on both sides, so we can't make that mistake. Put that on the base. Be sure to seal the package back up to keep it in the dark. And now we want to arrange our artwork on the cyanotype. And this is where your creativity comes out in. You can use your imagination. I'm going to be using some plants. That's a very popular subject for cyanotypes, but you can use anything. You might want to experiment with objects that are kind of semi-transparent, because that'll give you maybe some shades of blue rather than just black, blue and white. So we make our arrangements here of the plants there. I'm going to use this flower as kind of like the star on the top of the Christmas tree. And then I got a couple of lacy plants that I'm putting in on either side. And then the next step is to take a sheet of window glass. I recommend not using plastic like polycarbonate or plexiglass because That tends to absorb a lot of the UV, gives you a longer exposure. But an ordinary window glass really works well. Put that over your arrangement, press it down so everything's nicely in contact with the cyanotype paper, and now we're ready to take it out and expose it in the sun. And now we're ready to put the cyanotype and our little artwork arrangement into the sun to make the exposure. So here we go. Now, it can take anywhere between, a couple of minutes to 15 minutes to make the exposure, depending on how bright the sun is. Now, with some cyanotype papers, you can actually see the paper change color as it gets exposed to the sun, and that gives you a good clue as to whether or not it's exposed properly. This particular formulation doesn't seem to have that much color change, but I'm going to let it go for about 10 minutes, and we'll see how well the exposure is after that. The hummingbirds provide a nice distraction while we're waiting for the cyanotype to be exposed. Okay, I've let it go about 10 minutes, so we're ready to take it in back to the kitchen and see if we can develop it. Well, here we are back in my kitchen, and we're ready to start developing and fixing the cyanotype. And the nice thing is that can be done in one step, and it doesn't require any exotic chemicals. All it requires is water, straight out of the tap. So as you can see, I've got this blue tray inside my sink, which I've got filled with tap water. And now I'm going to take the glass plate off of the cyanotype, dump the plants off, and we're going to immerse the cyanotype into the water. Give it some agitation. Now, if we had a shallower tray, what we'd look for is to use running water, and we would look for the water running clear. That means you've dissolved away all the unexposed cyanotype chemicals. But since we don't have that here, we're just going to wait for it to get as blue as possible. And you might notice that where I had the flower, this guy here, it got exposed. So, and that's kind of cool. It means I could get some different shades of blue, but it also means that I probably overexposed this. I went for 10 minutes. I could have gone maybe 5, and the totally open places would be perfectly well exposed, and we would have got a little less exposure inside that flower and maybe developed a little bit more texture. Now this is about as blue as the cyanotype is going to get while it's wet. But as it dries, the blue will get significantly darker and deeper blue. Now, if you're impatient, what you can do, and this works a little bit better if the tray is shallower and there's less water, but just add a little bit of hydrogen peroxide to the water, and the cyanotype will get that deep blue almost immediately, and you won't have to wait for it to dry. I'm going to give it a few more minutes here just to make sure that we've got all the unexposed material dissolved away. And I think that's, yeah, we're getting a little bit more detail in where that flower is. So maybe we'll wash it a little bit longer. Try and bring out some of the detail in that flower. Now, it might have been nice if I had not had the flower obscured as much by my main branch, but you know, trial and error, learn as you go. Just have fun with different arrangements. Yeah, the flower is starting to look much better now. Gosh, an arrangement with just those flowers might look pretty cool too. Okay, I think that's about as good as it's going to get. So I will take it out of the water and we'll hang it up to dry. And here is how I dry it. I hang it up on a clothespin, just like people used to do their laundry in the olden days. And here's the final print. I've included the color checker to show you that the color is accurate. Well, that concludes episode 1 of Kitchen Sink Photography. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you go out and start making your own cyanotypes soon. But be sure to stay tuned. Pretty soon we'll be releasing episode 2 of Kitchen Sink Photography, where we'll show you how to make cyanotypes from your digital images. Until then, take care and have fun with photography.